welcome to the second episode of the Translation Podcast. The series is dedicated to new but also experienced translators and interpreters, and to anyone curious about the translation industry. Today we have a very special guest. I've invited Yelena to share with us her immense experience as both a translator and an interpreter. But before we jump right into the topic for today, let me properly introduce Yelena. Yelena McCafferty is an award-winning Russian and English translator and interpreter, specializing in legal, financial, and media matters. She has been running a translation business, Talk Russian, since 2002. She's regularly featured in various media publications and on the radio as a language expert. In 2017, she received a special commendation as an industry ambassador from the Institute of Translation and Interpreting. We met a couple of years ago on social media and in person earlier this year at the CL conference in London, and I'm absolutely thrilled for the discussion today. Today's topic will be really helpful for those of you who are just deciding between becoming a translator or an interpreter, and we'll discuss the business skills you need, the interpersonal skills you will benefit from, choosing between working freelance or in-house, and different paths from becoming certified in the UK. We'll also touch upon how to build your brand online, which is vital in today's world. Yelena has been working in this field for a very long time, and her advice is invaluable. So let's dive straight into it. Yelena, before we dive into the topic for today, tell us, what is the motivation for becoming a translator and interpreter? What drove you to this profession, and what keeps you in this field?
Thanks, Daniela, for a very flattering introduction. I hope I can live up to the expectations everybody will have now who joined this podcast, and I'm delighted to be a guest on your show. To answer your question, what drove me into becoming a translator and interpreter, to be honest with you, my first language qualification was in teaching English as a foreign language. And that's the job I did in Russia for a couple of years, and for just over 2 years here in the UK. Now, when I started working at Boston College here in Lincolnshire, where I'm still based, I decided to sort of test the waters and see if I can do a side hustle of translation and interpreting, because translation and interpreting were part of my university studies anyway. So I set up this brand name. I thought of a brand name and started marketing myself. And after 2 and a bit years, I had to give up teaching, simply because my business picked up, and I realized that I was enjoying translation and interpreting much more, and it was also more beneficial in financial terms. What still keeps me in this industry, I guess, it's the variety of projects I deal with. We translators and interpreters never have a dull moment, if I may say so. Well, you as a translator and an interpreter, I'm sure will agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have been doing translation and interpreting in this country. If I started sort of in 2002, roughly part-time, then I've been doing it for about 22 years, and I never looked back. Sometimes I get approached with suggestions whether I wanted to branch into other languages, or if I wanted, for example, to start teaching Russian. I had numerous offers from private individuals to teach Russian, but I am not qualified to teach Russian, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't have a clue where to start, because teaching one language or teaching one subject is one thing, but teaching your mother tongue is something else, because we pick up our native language in a completely different way, don't we?
Absolutely. I feel exactly the same. And how did you decide in the beginning, when you switched careers, to become a translator or interpreter? How did you decide between the two?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I just went for it because, and then sort of a few years down the line, I decided to do a DPSI, which is a Diploma in Public Service Interpreting, and have a UK qualification in interpreting. How did I decide? I guess the offers made the decision for me, because I was offered assignments both in interpreting and translation jobs. I guess if anybody is at the very beginning of their language career, they have to look at it this way. Translators are good writers and interpreters are good public speakers. That's where I would go from. So what would you enjoy doing? I know so many translators who wouldn't even dream or dare go into interpreting because it's not them. I mean, obviously, to be a translator or an interpreter or both, you have to have excellent language skills in more than one language. I practice just English and Russian, although my second foreign language is German. I don't practice it, and I really spoke it for the first time in a real sort of German-speaking environment in August this year when I visited Germany. Other than that, after I graduated, I never really had a chance to practice it, and it was very rusty. But you know what? Before going to Germany, I knew I was going. It was just a short city break to Munich. I started brushing up German on Duolingo, which is a very popular language app. It's got its own faults, but it helped me recall grammar and vocabulary, and I'm pleased I did. And when I arrived in Germany at the immigration control, I was determined to speak German to them, and I was very pleased that I was understood. But anyway, that's just by the by. Yeah, I also know interpreters who can translate, but they don't want to. They find the translation occupation a bit isolated and isolating, a bit lonely, and in a way boring, which I find very strange, because as I said to you at the very beginning, it is the variety of projects. It's this sort of not knowing what's going to land in your inbox next that keeps me alive, really. My son asked me one day last week. He said, "Do you have days when you can't be bothered starting to work?" And then there was a pause on my part, and he said, "Surely there are some days." But I honestly didn't know how to answer this question, because, well, not really. I said to him, there are days when you would hear me puffing and puffing a lot, because obviously there are projects that are harder than others, that are less appealing, and probably not of our favorite subject matters. And when we are not in the right frame of mind, which is what he was probably getting at. But not really. I love my job. I love my
Amazing.
job.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally relate to that. And it's so interesting that you have been doing both professions, both the translation and the interpreting profession. For those who are just starting up, right? And they want to decide between becoming a translator or becoming an interpreter. You mentioned, public speaking, and it's really interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but you're completely right. What would be your advice for them? How do you see the choice being made at the beginning? How can they take this decision based on their skills? And then we can maybe also talk about branching out, right? Because, if you are listening, don't think that if you are a translator, you'll stay one for life. You can also switch and become an interpreter and try them both.
Yeah, there is a certain difference between the two, and you may have to, if you're starting your career now, you may have to try both if you can do interpreting, but not because not everybody can. I think the interpreting requires, as I said, you to be a good public speaker, and that involves confidence. I'll tell you a story, because I think stories from real life experience say a lot. And I guess after each assignment, we learn something new. A few years ago, I was working with a high-ranking delegation, and I thought I was confident enough. I thought I sounded confident enough, and a good interpreter is a confident speaker. And this member of the delegation said to me twice, "Yelena, just a bit more confident." And I was thinking, come on, I'm talking confidently enough. But you know what? I was trying to balance it out, because yes, the speaker I was interpreting was confident. But on the other hand, we are interpreters. So are we trying to be, I'm the interpreter, so tone down a bit, because I am not you, I'm just interpreting you. And I was trying to strike that balance, not to be as, let's say, maybe loud or as vivid in the, body language. But clearly, the balance is very thin. Because if you sound too quiet, which I definitely didn't, it may make the wrong impression, even though, well, luckily it wasn't a remote assignment, it was a face-to-face assignment, so everybody could see the speaker, it could see his personality. So a good interpreter is a confident speaker. It's also a clear speaker, because at the end of the day, interpreters interpret meanings. We don't translate words. And you know yourself, there are some speakers who can be quite tough to understand. And not just, I don't mean just the accent. I mean what the message they're trying to convey. And the aim, our purpose of interpreters is the successful communication. So if we try to interpret somebody who is not exactly brilliant at expressing themselves, if we then do it in our target language, I believe that purpose will be broken. There will be no clear communication. Yes, you're trying to follow his style, but then on the other hand, the person who is listening to you may think, oh, the interpreter is no good, or I'm not sure I understand, or will they blame the speaker? So, interpreting is different in translation from translation in that way. When you translate books, you obviously follow the style. If it is stream of consciousness technique, then you follow the same technique in the original. In interpreting, it's different. So you have to be a clear speaker. You also have to have a well projected voice. And there are voice trainers, voice coaches, who will help you with exercises on prepping up for an assignment, and give you little tips when you've got a cold, how to make yourself sound a little bit better when you feel under the weather. Another thing that a good interpreter has to have is good general knowledge. It's good general knowledge because you never know which topic can come up in an assignment. And if you read newspapers, if you read magazines, if you listen to the radio, watch TV, if you are aware of the current affairs, it will make your job a lot easier. And it is also, in my opinion, important to follow the news in both languages. Because that way, well, let's say one of the topics of last week here in the UK was this handover of Chagos Islands to Mauritius. And then, so next, on the same day, I came up a news source in Russian and saw how Chagos Islands are translated actually into Russian. I thought, oh, that's good. I know what it is in Russian now. So, in situations like that, I've just given you a very recent example. And, I mentioned that some speakers are difficult to interpret because they're not very good at formulating the message they want to put across, but also because the English or whatever language you're interpreting from is not their mother tongue, and they may have a very strong regional or personal accent. So we all have accents. We can't get away from that. Even King Charles III has an accent, even though it's received pronunciation. We all have an accent, but it helps an interpreter if they have a sort of a clear, not a neutral, but an easy to understand accent. Because I know you get compliments when nobody struggles to pick up what you're saying. So that's the interpreting side. Translation, it's requires a slightly different set of skills. It's, you yourself know, it's attention to detail. You have to make sure that you include everything that you are translating, because translation has to be accurate. Then it's your research skills. Another example I'll give you. I recently translated a fairly easy document, but there was a school name there, and the school name had an abbreviation, VC, and I couldn't for the life of me think what it could be. Of course, what do? You Google. And the first result that comes up in the search engine is the school website itself. I go onto the school website. I look through most of the pages. Of course, the first thing I look at is the about page. Yes, the name of the school is this still VC, and what is it? So I look at other pages on Google and nobody is telling me. I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave me the answer straight away. Well, you know what? If you live in Wales, and it was a school in Wales, you probably know it straight away. I don't live in Wales. You don't live in Wales. So VC stands for voluntarily controlled. I would never have guessed. So yeah, research skills. When you're a translator, you're bound to come across an unknown term, let alone acronym, and you will need to research, and you'll need to know how to research. And from that day on, I thought, well, maybe it's not Google I need to go to first as my first port of call, but AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever, because I would have saved, if not hours, I would have saved minutes trying to find that term. Then what else? Timekeeping discipline, because every project will have a deadline. Absolutely every deadline, even if it's not an urgent project, you will still need to deliver it by a certain day or time, and it's self-discipline. Most of translators, including me, work from home. I have my home-based office, but it doesn't mean that I get out of bed and go and start working in my pajamas. For me, it's a no-no. It sends the wrong signals to my brain. the discipline is working in appropriate clothing. Okay, maybe not in a suit and not in a blouse, unless you want to, unless you've got an interpreting assignment later on in the day. But certainly for me, self-discipline is important. Starting, some people I know are quite flexible in working. I'm an early bird. I like starting to work early. And what else? Like any other industry, translation is a fast-moving industry, and we have to keep an eye on technology. And technology is not something new that translators take on board or learn to master. Technology has been in the translation business for years and years, starting from computers instead of typewriters to CAD tools, and now we've got machine translation, assisted translation, and post-editing. So for anyone really who is starting their career and deciding what you want to do, I've just given you an introduction into some of the skills you will need, apart from the language skills and apart from, of course, the interpreting and translation skills themselves. I'm saying if you are basically trained and or qualified in both, what do you want to do? See how it goes for you. See what you enjoy most.
I love it. Absolutely amazing. So let's do a quick recap for those of you listening. So for interpreting, you absolutely need public speaking skills. You need to be confident. You should consider also doing voice training. Yeah, that's something very, very useful and useful during the life, right? So that is something that you'll use throughout your life. Having good general knowledge, reading and listening to news. This is really useful not only to keep your language skills fresh, but to be up to date with the latest terminology. To have good rephrasing techniques if you need to, so dealing with different public speakers, and to have a neutral accent, which will definitely help you be understood. And in order to be a good translator, first of all, attention to details. To have a good command of the language, good research skills, the use of new technologies, being open to it, being self-disciplined and have a discipline of your time, and being flexible in an ever-changing industry. So we talked about the skills, and we have a really good list there where that can be used by our listeners. What would you say the business skills needed are to continue not only to acquire customers or clients, but also to keep a good relationship with them? So what would be considered good business skills both in interpreting and translation?
Well, if you ask a language graduate, a graduate who's just done an MA in translation or in interpreting, most of them will say that they are unprepared for going into business because they don't know where to start. They don't know what business skills they need. They don't know what would be useful for them, what sort of courses or whatever. And this is nearly everybody says about their program, their curriculum lacking at universities. This sort of component seems to be ignored, or I don't work at universities. I don't know how they design programs, but this element seems to be neglected. To work for yourself, either as a translator or as an interpreter, you have to do your marketing. And I was lucky when I started. There was a government program It was a free program, and I had one-to-one sessions with a business consultant. I actually had sort of a refresher on that just before the pandemic. I remember it was 2019. I remember the gentleman coming into my office, sitting here on this city. You know why it's helpful? Because it's somebody else who has got no idea about your business, who can only guess what a translator or an interpreter will do. And it's another set of eyes looking at it, analyzing it with you, and seeing where you might be missing out or any faults that you don't see yourself. It's amazing, and I would encourage anyone in the UK. I'm not sure about other countries. There may be similar programs available. It's through, it was a different outfit at the time. It's through the local, ours is called Business Lincolnshire. There are probably similar in other counties. There are also chambers of commerce who can help, although the chambers of commerce usually do it for a fee, and they've got membership fees. Although you can join their courses and pay for them even as an external trainee. So marketing is one skill, negotiation skills, because every job that you are going to discuss is up for negotiation, and the negotiation is a two-way, sometimes three-way process. You will be talking to a person who may not necessarily be a decision maker in this particular project, and you need to be able to sell it. Unfortunately, I know people are sort of a bit nervous about using this word sell and sale, because for some they seem to have some kind of negative connotation, but don't look at it like this, because if you're going into business is sales, and you have to, if you don't like the word, if you don't want to sell yourself, well, then think of another word that will make you feel better about doing it. It's customer service. You will come up, once you start doing it, you will come up with your own little tricks and ideas about how you then get feedback after a project. But obviously, if somebody sounds nice and polite and friendly on the phone, there are more chances that they will buy from you because you sound nice, because you seem to have good customer service skills. So I guess that's all part of the big business skills. And accounts, you will be doing your own accounts. Initially you probably won't need an accountant, because your turnover won't be so big. You probably won't need to register for VAT, because once you establish your business, if time in a day runs out, you may want an accountant or a bookkeeper to help you and navigate through the process. And of course, there's lots of different accounting software to help you as well. So yeah, business skills is a multifaceted notion, if I can put it like this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And you're right, Yelena. In my experience too, having studied interpreting and translation, they don't teach you business skills in school, although they should. They should bring real life interpreters and translators to talk about it, or business consultants. I'm sure that every university has a management faculty, right? And there's no one in a better position to advise translators on business skills. Just a quick recap for those of you listening. So marketing is really important, and I would add to it, be present online, right? Because if you're not present online, then we can't find you. And in today's world, you need to be online. So you can choose between having a Facebook page, which is free, or do a little investment in a website, which can put you out there on the World Wide Web. Marketing is really important, so market your services. Think about maybe getting some free business consulting advice. There should be someone locally who can help you, either the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe there are some networking groups that you can join. There are a lot of very experienced people in the UK too. Mainly in the UK, I was pleasantly surprised how open people are to mentoring and coaching you. So don't be afraid to go and reach out for advice. Good negotiation skills. Be confident, right? So it all goes back to the confidence that we were talking about. Having good customer service skills, and in general being enthusiastic about the services that you offer. Being open to feedback. So feedback, I think, is the most important. Reflecting on my initial years, getting feedback, constructive feedback, good, bad feedback, all sorts of feedback makes you evolve, makes you grow. Accounting skills, this is something that I lacked also in the beginning. I was thinking, I'm not a numbers person, but you have to become one, especially in the beginning. Know your business, know your sales. This is what you are doing, right? So this is a business for you. This is what brings money in. And lastly, I would add networking, right? Networking after you have all this, get out there. That's how we met with Yelena, right? Just meet with like-minded translator interpreters, but not only. Just go to any networking groups and see what's out there. Amazing. So today in the UK and worldwide, there are so many translators and interpreters, but mainly in the UK. I was so shocked to learning when I moved in the UK that not all the translators are certified or sworn, or not all the interpreters are trained. So in a world where there are so many of us on the market, what differentiates us? And Yelena, what is your advice for all of us, really? How can we differentiate ourselves in this sea of professionals?
You're absolutely right, Daniela. In the UK, our profession is not regulated, and there are hundreds of translators and interpreters out there, or people who call themselves translators or interpreters. And as you mentioned, the key is to be out there online, to make yourself known, to build your brand, to establish your brand, to stand out from others. There seems to be like two groups of linguists now. Those who are fighting AI and those who are riding with AI. But you know what? It's actually interesting. It's interesting. I picked this up this year, that more and more clients, corporate and private individuals, check what registrations and what qualifications you have. When I started, nobody cared. When I started, we were talking 20 years ago, nobody cared. Can you do this? What's the price? You're happy to go with that. Now, I noticed it over the past year. People are asking, people are checking, are you chartered? Are you registered? Do you have a stamp? Or are you a qualified? You're an interpreter. What qualification do you have? What registration? You know what I'm putting this down to? I'm thinking they're trying to differentiate real interpreters and AI interpreters and translators, those that are machines that, they have been developed, I guess, to certain certification standards, but they don't have that a real human qualified registered translator or interpreter has. It's interesting. I think it's the public opinion and the public perception is changing with the influence of AI. Totally. And so to stand out from the crowd, you you have to become known. And how do you become known? Yeah, but you become known by saying things that are useful to your customers, because customers appreciate that, and they think, well, if I am reading, this is what she's saying, well, on, let's say, Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever, if he or she is saying that, I can imagine what kind of expertise, value I could get if we start working together. Yeah, so it's standing out through your own knowledge that you can help your customers with. And as for the non-regulation, it seems, although I mean it's a tricky situation with public service interpreting, for example, where the value of qualifications and experience seems to be seems to go lower and lower every year. But the situation seems to be quite different for the private market. That's what my understanding is, at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have the same experience. I think probably 90% of my customers are asking me if I'm registered. Even the newer ones who don't need like legal translation or so on, they ask me, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to ask. And you're spot on with the rise of AI. There's so many agencies as well that ask you, are you, we make you sign a disclaimer that you're not using AI or automated machine translation without doing any editing. So absolutely, that's a really good thing. And what would you say, because nowadays there aren't so many in-house translation jobs, but there are some. But if you were to choose between becoming an in-house translator or a freelance translator, what would you have chosen 20 years ago? And what would you have chosen today?
Well, I'm kind of both, because I'm in-house. I run my own translation company. I'm an in-house translator and interpreter. However, for translation agencies, I'm a freelancer. So I'm kind of both. But there are proper job ads out there for in-house translators, and not necessarily working for translation agencies, but for corporate clients. I've seen loads, not necessarily in my language, but I was doing a presentation a couple of years ago for Durham University to talk about the pros and cons of working freelance and in-house, and I was researching the market. There are, for example, there was one clothes brand that was looking for a French in-house translator. It's interesting that it's mostly to do with marketing, that companies would look to have somebody in-house in various languages: Spanish, German, French, a lot more with French, to be honest. In-house, you can also work in-house, not necessarily as a translator, but as something else with translation skills. For example, paralegals. Again, I've seen job ads for a Polish paralegal, but where your job description would include doing some translation work and interpreting over the phone, potentially with Polish-speaking clients or something. Or there are in-house jobs for something like a sales manager or a business development manager or an international business development manager, where again it is within your job description that you would be expected to do certain translations. I guess not brochures, because that would take up quite a lot of your working hours, I guess. But so in-house doesn't necessarily mean you will be working for a translation agency. There are other vacancies out there which you could potentially look into, because working in-house gives you certain stability and guarantees. You will have your salary, holiday pay, sick pay. Some of the companies will offer you free gym membership or private dental care paid for or subsidized. So there are certain advantages. Freelance also has advantages because you are your own boss. You don't like the deadline, you don't like the rate they offer you, or they ask you to match, because sometimes say, oh, but we got an offer from this and can you match that? No, you don't have to take it. You decide. You're your own boss. And but on the other hand, there's no stability. So you don't know if you are experiencing a dry period, there's not much work coming in, then you may begin to panic, thinking, oh, maybe it's all over, maybe I should look for something new. And freelance, you can decide when you can take your holidays. So there are advantages and disadvantages. What I would warn people about, though, if you are switching from in-house to freelance, is research the market. It would be a mistake if you decided, okay, my salary a month was, well, let's, I don't know, this. I'm now going to divide it into the number of working days per month and see how much I would need to make per day. That is the wrong route, because you won't be, it only gives you sort of kind of a gross profit, but what that fee doesn't include is that all the time you'll be spending, as we said, marketing, negotiating, chasing unpaid invoices, that sort of thing. So research the market, research the going rate for freelancers, but don't fall into this trap of using your salary as a baseline for calculating your fees.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice, and it can go the other way around too, right? Because if you are doing an internship in a translation agency, like I started doing, so I had an internship during university in an in-house translation agency. They weren't paying me too much, right? So it can go the other way around too, that you can make more money by being freelance. But yes, one of the challenges is to have a stable revenue month over month, which will not happen in the beginning. So you have to do your research, you have to build your business plan. So think of it as a business, and depending on what opportunities you have. I would say as well, working in-house, if you have the opportunity, it's a good way to determine whether you want to continue doing that, or if you want to be completely 100% freelance and start your own company. In my case, that happened, that I decided that I didn't want to work in-house. There was like too much stress, too many deadlines, too much pressure, and I considered it to be a bit much, and I wanted a little bit of flexibility. And funny enough, when I started as an interpreter in the beginning, it was 2010, actually 2008, 9, and then 10, when we had the economical crisis. So I didn't do my homework. I didn't know that maybe I wouldn't get enough customers, right? Because we started off, I think we started off, all of us, by having a lot of assignments, and then it all went down the hill, so to say. So yeah, I think your advice is spot on, Yelena. Check the market, check to see what the agencies are doing, check to see if there is a need for your translation services, and then also maybe consider a specializing field as well. So in the sea of translators, I noticed nowadays that companies, but also translation agencies, are looking for specialized translators. So against the AI wave, if you want, they need specialists as well. So one of the things that you can consider too is to specialize yourself in a field based on the assignments that you get. So if you have the luxury of of doing that. So going back to the UK market, Yelena, and we talked about interpreting. For our listeners who want to become public service interpreters, can you talk to us a little bit about the career paths and about the certifications needed, and how can they become public service interpreters, and how can they work both with the public services as well as with translation agencies?
Yeah, sure. One of the qualifications you can take is Diploma in Public Service Interpreting, which is what I did back in 2010. That then allows you to register with the NAPSI, which is the National Register for Public Service Interpreters. And there are two statuses there, full and interim. Well, actually, you can register with the NAPSI even before you obtain your qualification, provided you have 400 hours of public service interpreting experience, which I guess can be difficult to get if you are not qualified, but you may have a slightly lower qualification. For example, I think it's certificate in community interpreting level 3. Maybe you've already got those 400 hours and you can get an interim status, and I think then they give you a certain number of years to work towards your full status, but then you've got the time to take and pass the DPSI, Diploma in Public Service Interpreting. If you have just got, if you have had DPSI for a while, but you haven't got the 400 hours, you can still register on the NAPSI and on the interim status. And then hopefully the registration will lead to more work, so you will get more hours towards the golden 400, and then you can get the full status. So if we're talking specifically for public service interpreting, then NAPSI, DPSI, there's also a diploma, I think it's DPI, Diploma in Police Interpreting. I think if you want to work for Met Police, I think you need to have that, but they don't take on everyone. I think they've got a strict limit on the number of interpreters they have in their books. Because they don't want to oversaturate their own database, but every now and then they take on more, because obviously people retire, move on, etc., and they need to replenish their resources. There's also the Chartered Institute of Linguists registration. You could register and become a member and become a chartered interpreter, because you can, the chartered status, the chartered linguist status also falls into chartered translator and chartered interpreter. So when I applied for chartership, I got both, chartered interpreter and chartered translator. So I think that's as far as public service interpreting in the UK goes, Daniela.
Okay, that's amazing. I think that's really good knowledge for those of us listening, and I will pop the links in the video description so that we have them. Are there also translation agencies who are working with interpreters without having these degrees? Do you know? I think
there are certain contracts agencies have with public services that allow them to use, who would call them underqualified, who would call people with lower qualifications, maybe not, it's not even a diploma, maybe a certificate in community interpreting. That is also true for rare languages, for example, for which you can't take DPSI or DPI, simply because there are no examiners, I guess. So yeah, some translation agencies use interpreters without those distinct qualifications. Some are happy to accept foreign qualifications. If you've got an MA in interpreting, well, especially if it's conference interpreting, which is very highly regarded, then I guess you don't need to have DPSI. On the other hand, you may probably branch into it and do a little bit of public service interpreting, just to sort of not to keep all eggs in one basket, to do both conference and a little bit of public service and see. So to avoid those dry periods where you have little work.
Absolutely. And there are some translation agencies who would work with freelance translators who don't have these degrees, mainly in the medical field as well. So there are a lot of hospital appointments, which again requires the knowledge of the field, quite an in-depth knowledge. But for those of you listening, you can reach out to several translation agencies and ask, right? Maybe they're open to it, and you can put those 400 hours, right, in your books when you are registering to pass the exam. Having passed the exams for any of the certifications would for sure differentiate you and will ensure that you will get more work and more stable work. And yes, we did talk about the university pass as well, so you can also take the BA and MA in bachelor's and master's in interpreting or in translation. So there are a couple of universities in the UK offering it, and with those you can register to be a CL member. That's what I'm planning to do as well. So to register mine as well. Amazing. So Yelena, when we had the quick prep for the podcast, we talked about a very interesting principle that I haven't heard about, and I think it's really interesting for our listeners. So can we talk a little bit about the PESTLE? I think it's called PESTLE principle. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, you are saying it correctly. Yeah, it's got a T, but it's not pronounced. I think we just follow the English rules of pronunciation. It's the PESTLE principle. PESTLE, meaning standing P for political, E economic, S for social, T for technological, L for legal, and E for environmental. So this is a group of factors, external factors, that influence your business. You can't get away from it. So I'm going to give you some examples. So PESTLE, political. Oh my God, did that influence my business? The politics, the geopolitics that affected my business because I deal with the Russian language. You have to keep your finger on the pulse because it just comes on you out of nowhere. And the situation with Ukraine and the military actions, they affected my clientele. My clientele is very different from what it was, let's say, 5 years ago. So that's the political principle. This is totally beyond your control. Or as lawyers would say, force majeure. There's nothing you can do about it. You can regret it, you can moan about it, you can criticize it, but your hands are tied. There's nothing you can do. Then economic, as you said, when you started, it was a global economic crisis, 2007, 2008. Again, nothing you can do. Or if a country is hitting a recession and a good chunk of your customers are, say, private individuals, if they've got less disposable income, it may affect their purchasing ability. Will they be able to afford your services? Well, if they have to get a translation done, then they're going to have to, but they'll probably fish around for offers more than they used to, simply because they've got less money to spend. Again, doesn't depend on you. Social, what good example can I give for social? Yeah, interpreting. Back in 2011, 2012, I was interpreting at my local police station every day. Sometimes it even came up to 4 times a day, because we had a lot of Russian speakers where I lived. And unfortunately, they were committing crimes. Now, the social fabric of the area where I live has changed. We now have, if we do have a foreign-speaking population, they're from other countries. Now, the rate of me going to a police station, we're talking 2-3 times a month, simply because those jobs are very scanty. There's not enough work. So if I was relying on police interpreting, I think I would have already left the profession now, or I would have moved areas, because here there's very little interpreting of that type now. So that's your social. Technological, I'm not even going to talk about, because we've already mentioned it several times about AI, machine translation, automated translations, and obviously it's affecting not just translators and interpreters. It's affecting everybody now. So technological, I think it's self-explanatory. Legal. Yeah, that's a good one. By sheer accident, I learned that it was either June or July, there's been a change in certified translation requirements for family courts in England and Wales. And they now require that the certified translation is signed either by the translator or it is notarized by a UK notary. So how did I find out about it? Because somebody on Facebook, I'm a member of a Russian-speaking group, somebody said, "Wait, I've just been sent back this translation from court," or not mine, translation from court. I don't know what's wrong. They say that it's got to be signed by a translator and not a translation agency manager. And I started looking, and then they gave the wording in the letter that they received from court. And then I came to this official gov.uk, it wasn't actually gov.uk, it was justice.gov.uk page, where it says, I think it's from 1st of July, whatever, but don't quote me on that. The translations you submit to family court have to be certified, signed by the translator or notarized by a UK notary. So that's your legal implication. Again, it was beyond your control. You had nothing to do with it, but a requirement has changed and you have to abide by it. Environmental is the last one in this acronym. Environmental, I guess now we are very much, okay, I'll give you this example. There was a time when, if we're still on the subject of certified translations, when everybody required a hard copy. Now, a lot of organizations will just accept a scan, an emailed scan. I don't know whether it was driven by efficiencies or the green agenda. So this is your environmental factor there, saving the planet and this and that. But now a lot of organizations accept documents served by email. Yeah, still certified, but in an electronic is fine. So a PESEL principle, definitely watch out for all of the changes that have been happening and are about to happen in the future. And this is a good principle that kind of summarizes them all.
I love it. I think it really summarizes very well all the aspects that we need to be aware of. So please remember this principle, the PESEL principle. So political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental, right? Hope I got it right. Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the intensity of public interpreting assignments. We know that you talked about it, you touched on it a little bit. some of the assignments can be really intense and can, take a toll on your mental health or the way that you manage things. And it is one of the reasons some interpreters maybe want to, quit this profession and maybe turn back to translation. So Yelena, what is your advice? How can we manage our mental health, especially during really high stressful situations, and how to manage the situations we're in, right? So how to manage the others we're interpreting for, because we're not only conveying the message, but we're also interpreting their emotions and their way of conveying these.
Very, very true, Daniela. This is a very burning point for interpreters, because most of us are freelancers and we don't have the counseling support, let's say, police officers have in-house, for example, if they're dealing with a difficult case and if they are beginning to struggle with their mental health. It's very good that we're talking about it. And I actually talked to a Guardian journalist, I believe, just over a year ago, I think, and she included it in her article about vicarious trauma. We have to look after ourselves, and each of us has our own tricks, if you like. If I am dealing with a very emotionally charged situation, and let's say an aggressive individual, let's say if it's in a police interview, the trick that I use is I imagine a waterfall between me and them, and that visual waterfall serves as a kind of barrier that prevents his emotion from coming across to me, even though I still have to interpret from first person singular. So whatever he's saying, I have to say I, as if it was coming from me. But that sort of emotional, I mean, some people imagine a war, but a waterfall works for me because, water has got a very calming effect, hasn't it? And so I use this trick. Another one I picked up, it was during COVID when a lot of people struggled with their mental health, and a lot of people started doing their own bit to help each other through the pandemic, and they did a lot of free webinars to leave their so-called COVID legacy. So one of these webinars was on mental health, and the therapist introduced something interesting. She said you can have a comfort box. You can have a comfort box where you can have, for example, lavender. Not for me, I don't like lavender, but for others, lavender. Or you can have a small piece of chocolate, probably your favorite one. Or you can written out or printed out testimonials from your client, really glowing ones, really good ones. So when you come back from a really stressful assignment, when you think, oh, that really got me today, you can open that comfort box, go through its contents, and that will make you feel better. I thought that was a really good tip, really good tip. Some people do yoga, some people breathing is important. Breathing is important for both public speaking and for calming yourself down. Breathing is important before an interpreting assignment you feel a little bit nervous about. Breathe. It is bound to calm you down to a certain extent. Another one, I've not practiced it myself. I picked it up from one of the therapy sessions I interpreted. So the therapist was dealing with this lady who was going through a lot, and again, it was a situation beyond her control. It was to do with her relative. There was nothing she could do, but she was very worried about him. So the therapist suggested to take her mind, she's got to help herself, to take her mind off those worries. He suggested that she goes and puts her hands and arms under very cold water, to the point when her arms and hands begin to hurt, sheer pain of cold water, because that refocuses her brain, because her brain then starts dealing with her physical health, not with all of those thoughts preoccupying her. But yeah, mental health and interpret is very important. Every now and then somebody holds sessions on how to deal with this sort of thing. And yeah, we are disadvantaged because we can only seek that help ourselves. It's not like there are in-house resources readily available to us.
I love that. I think, wow, what amazing advice. So more than one, take your pick. There's so many. I love the comfort box idea too. Now I have to think about what would I add to my comfort box. So now I have some homework to do. Definitely not lavender. Funny enough, I don't like lavender either. So must be something really fruity for me to put me in a good mood. Breathing. Yeah, breathing is something that I used to do when I was interpreting at conferences. So I no longer do it, but I hope to be back to get back at doing it. But I was doing a lot of breathing exercises, and in general, just to breathe to calm your emotions and to refocus. So that's amazing. Thank you, Yelena. So one last question, to put us in a really good mood. Can you tell us one or two funny stories while you were interpreting, or heartwarming? So you can take your pick. I'm sure you have so many. Would you like to share them with us?
Funny. I'm not really sure, because what's funny for some may not be funny for others, and especially for our clients. But one of the very special assignments that I love is when clients introduce us to be part of their very special day. For example, if it's for marriage registration, and I've worked with clients on a few occasions now, in churches and in register offices, and it's always so deeply touching when you're standing there with them, and then they exchange their vows and rings, and you are facilitating that. But if you want like a funny story out of it, just before the last interpreting assignment in church, I asked the clients and the priest about my dress code, because I wasn't sure whether I should be too formal or very smart, or like one of the guests, sort of to blend in, or is it smart casual? And the priest said, smart casual, just make sure you don't get confused for a bride. Yes, so white was out of the question then.
That's so funny. That's so funny. And it reminds me of an old interpreting story where I was wearing this great red suit I was so proud of, and I was interpreting at a medical conference where to my surprise, all the doctors were wearing white. So imagine me, the red dot. Everybody could spot from far away who was the interpreter at that conference, but it worked in my favor. So for sure, matching the dress code is really important, and that's so funny.
Interesting. The other way around, yeah.
The other way around, exactly. Amazing. Yelena, this was really great. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation to the Translation podcast. This was absolutely amazing. Just so many advice for those of us, listening, who are considering to go this path, so to become translators or interpreters, or even for the ones who are working right in our amazing and lovely profession. So just to remember, what do we do it for, and how passionate we are. So thank you so much for joining today, for sharing your knowledge, your advice, and your experience with us.
Thank you, Daniela. I think you're doing a great job. This translation podcast initiative you've started, and I look forward to many more episodes.
Amazing. Thank you.